The sound of crunching fallen autumn leaves trod underfoot. Really nice sound as I was setting up the basher after the nighttime paddle. It's a Thursday night and I'm out for a couple of days, and mainly to do a bit of fishing, which I haven't done for a good few years, and I've just got myself, look at that, bit of luxury. My new reclining fishing chair. It's even got the label still on it. Good morning, it's Pete, Mindwiseman's channel, aka Maverick Outdoors, and today's Friday morning, the 17th of November 2017. So last night's paddle was Thursday to get here in the dark. The temperature wasn't too bad, it was about 6 to 7 degrees. Sky was overcast. Got caught in a little bit of rain, hence had my waterproofs on and decided to cover up all the kit on the Canoe with some small plastic tarps. But the paddle to get here was quite comfortable. It was only about 5 minutes of rain and then that was it. But the temperature was quite mild due to the fact that it had been sunny during the day, and then of course the cloud cover coming over tends to keep the warmth in. So by the time I actually set up my pitch and my tarp, the sky started to clear and it was really nice. There was no light pollution, you could see all the star constellations, and much easier to see because now it's autumn and the trees are shedding their leaves, so you can see up through the skeletal frames of all the trees the sky above. But of course that then meant that the temperature was going to drop, because with the sky clearing obviously heat rises, and it was noticeable round about 9-10 o'clock. The temperature dropped to about 2 to 3 degrees, hence put on all my thermals. After settling to sleep for the night under my 2-season tropical army sleeping bag, I'd worn my cargo trousers, but underneath are my quilted lined thermal trouser liners, check army issue. And my upper half was a t-shirt, a lightweight zipper fleece, and then my sleeveless body warmer, and then this fleece, homemade fleece over the top. And under the hood was basically my fleece skull cap, which really did the job. So the cold didn't disturb my sleep under the 2-season tropical army sleeping bag, considering your temperature drops once you sort of get into your deep sleep. and it can sometimes wake you up when you've gone to sleep thinking you're going to be warm enough. But it didn't really disturb me, but I think I could have actually done with my 3-season sleeping bag. So if you follow my travels, you'll have seen me use the black one with a sort of a green band that goes across it, which is my 3-season, which is much more of a thermal quality than the one I used last night. And again, if you follow my travels, you know I use these British Army issue 1.2 metre self-inflating mats, but I've been using 2 of them, sort of a better thermal quality against the ground, plus as well it's more comfortable just having that extra double layer. But the reason why I bring the mats up in this instance is that slightly different configuration with them. As you can see, part of it is actually being used as a pillow, and also used my PFD underneath my knee pads and the kit bag, and then my mooring knife just here I embedded in the ground safely, and so it stops any of this sort of shunting up and moving and dislodging from under my head. So that kept a constant angle for me to sort of place my head, because I didn't bring my pillow with me. So I had the double insulation and thickness going along right the way down to about my knees, and then of course with the mat that was on top went a little bit further than the one that's underneath, because of course the upper part of it was at an angle there to rest my head. That was basically an improvisation I had to do, because in the sort of impromptu circumstances that enabled me to come out for a few days, my pillow that I sometimes use was with some other kit, so I thought, well, I know I could get round it somehow by just utilising some bits and pieces, because I do like a little bit of angle on my head when I go to sleep for the night. I brought all of my kit in just one heavy-duty holdall, which again, follow my travels, you've seen this before, but I haven't used it for a while. But I decided to use that to put all of my sleep kit, some extra bits of clothing, thermal layers, and all my cook kit and everything was all basically all contained. Everything I needed was in that holdall. So again, if you do follow my travels, you'll know that I will use my camo dry bag, 100-litre bag, to put all my sort of what I'd call software, like clothing, sleep kit, that sort of thing. And then in my canoe rucksack, I'll then put my heavy-duty stuff like cooking equipment and also food. So everything you see here, bar the little table and the jerry can of water, all fitted in that holdall, with a few extra little sort of sundries, millbank bag if I need it for emergency, multi-tool. In here was my fire starting kit, also a small set of binoculars, and always for backup my Hexi stove and some blocks, and then my first aid kit in that pouch. The end pouch was my saucepan and inserted kettle, and this other end pouch was my firebox stove folded up, and also that little container which has all my batteries, torches, etc. At the end of the day, before I settle for the night, I always like to sort of tidy and just group all my things together, sort of in a particular space, although it wasn't predicted to rain last night. Again, just in case, it's out the way, and also I've got a practical space if I need to get in and out of the higher end of the basher. But what I need to do now is get that 533 single burner stove on the go, and then have a little tally about in that green bag, because I've got some maple cured bacon, fried eggs and brioche rolls to make for my breakfast. So it's early afternoon on Friday. It's a lovely sunny afternoon. I knew it was going to be sunny all day today from the weather forecast, so I wanted to take advantage of coming out for these few days and giving a bit of rock and roll with a bit of fishing. As you can see, I'm relaxed in my new acquisition, my fishing chair, which I'm going to use for sort of like bushcraft meets and group campouts and all that sort of thing. So it's nice to have your legs out in front and leaning back on a reclining backrest if you want to sort of really chill and go right back at nearly horizontal level. But to my side, as you saw previously, is my fishing tackle box, which I've had since I was about 10 years old. And you can see there, I don't know if you can get those anymore, but it's a cork handled fishing knife. But I won't go into too much the technicalities and the whys and wherefores of all the kit and its uses and sort of getting all technical about fishing techniques and all that sort of thing. But what I've actually come out for this afternoon is, from sitting in a little bit of sunlight, I'll take you over to where I've got floated up out on the swim. And there's my small 2.5 foot canoe fishing rod. I acquired this rod in about 2009 and never actually used it, although I've got loads of other fishing kit that I've had since I was like 8-10 years old. And I thought, you know what, I thought as I was going to take advantage of the lovely weather, albeit it's now autumn and it's getting really sort of chilly temperatures, I thought I'd get togged up and do a little bit of leisurely fishing and I'll see if I can catch myself some quarry for something to eat later on. Whitefish, and that's perch. They normally feed at the early part of the day, at sort of sunrise, early morning, and then sort of later on at dusk. So this isn't really a feeding time for them. So my tackle setup is just a little bobbing float, and just about 12 inches down from there is an earthworm, which I've got hooked on a number 9. As perch, I've got very big mouths, so that would be appropriate to try and hook it. So the rod and reel came as a package, and it's got an Abu Garcia closed face fixed spool reel, single-handed trigger handle, which is normally the case for short fishing rods if it's going to be one-handed. And on the fixed spool reel is a release trigger switch, which when you press it, it releases. As I press it now, you can see the float drop down with the bait. And obviously you keep your finger now pressed on the trigger, which keeps it at that consistent length. But if I was to release that again, the float would drop all the way down, which it has down to the floor. And then for the mechanism to reel in the line, basically it's just turning that, there's a little click inside the mechanism, and then I can just reel the line in if I was actually fishing out on the water, which I'm now going to do. So I'm now going to press the trigger, but when I take my thumb off, it will actually allow the float to drop with the bait. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to swing it, and when I get to approximately where I want it to be, I mean this is more demonstration really, but when I get to that point I'll let the trigger go and the float's just by the side of the bank, which is appropriate for perch fishing. But basically perch are predatory fish and they tend to be in groups, shoals, but when they get bigger and get anything maybe over sort of specimen size, sort of 3-4 pound upwards, they tend to maybe hunt in pairs or sort of live together in pairs. The side of the bank here is not that conducive because perch tend to like overhang, so where you can see that sort of bit of branch there, they tend to sort of want it sort of closer to the water, so it sort of shades them. Because their instinct for hunting and feeding is very similar to the pattern on their scales, the stripe effect, the vertical stripe effect as you actually look at the length of it, which matches undergrowth in the water, reeds, lilies, that sort of thing, where they tend to hunt for their prey in reed beds and that sort of thing, and sort of swim in and out, or maybe normally sort of hang around and just wait for their quarry to move around. I don't want to get into the whys and wherefores and politics of fishing techniques and all that sort of thing, because there's certain things that I sort of do know from experience of fishing over the years, although I've sort of taken a break for fishing. But I thought I'd just sort of give it a go this afternoon, bring out the little canoe rod, christen that, although it might not necessarily be the most practical rod. You might want anything from about a 9 to 11 foot if you're sort of fishing at an angle. So a longer rod would be more appropriate and conducive. Say if you were sitting riverbank here and you're away from casting a shadow or scaring off the fish, your rod could sort of be at a slight diagonal, or even taking it at a 90 degree from the bank and the line coming across, or the tip of the rod coming across, and then the line going down into maybe where the reeds would be, where there'd be more chance of the perch hunting their prey. There's loads of things to consider, like the flow of the river, that sort of thing, weighting down the line, the depth of the water. I mean, next to the bank here is not that deep. It sort of chamfers down at sort of anything from where the bank goes down from about 12-18 inches to maybe 2 foot, and it's not until you get further out into this part of the flow of the river where I'm at now, where actually it might not get until you get to about the centre of the river, that it might be anything from 6, 8, 9 foot deep. But perch specifically tend not to have a habitat in the middle of the flow of a river unless it's really sort of cold weather and colder seasons, like it's maybe autumn and especially winter. And believe it or not, the water for them is warmer on the lower levels than what it is on the surface, so they tend to then have their habitat a little bit more frequented in the middle. So I don't really want to be fishing out right in the middle of the water because I haven't got the kit. I didn't bring my 9-foot rod with me, so I just thought, you know, I'd christen a little canoe rod, have a little bit of fun. What with bringing out my fishing kit for the first time in ages, and that new requisition, and my 2.5-foot long little canoe rod, which is just lying down there, and the line's going across here, and the float has just come in a little bit closer to the bank. You can see it's at a slight angle there. That'll be probably due to the fact that the earthworm has probably just snagged on a little bit of surface or something that's further underneath, which then makes the affects the actual alignment of the float. But I don't want to sort of make this a fishing tutorial because you know, lots of people have got their own ideas. There's basic knowledge to particular type of fishing and certain species of fish at different times of the year and the kit you might use. But I just thought I'd include it and share with you a sort of bit of a video diary of me being out, and maybe going to be doing this a little bit more often. But hopefully, if the fish start biting a little bit later on when they have their second feed, I might actually try and find an area which is a little bit more reed based, or where there's any overhangs of trees, that sort of thing, creating shade, which perch tend to sort of habitat. And because your average perch swims with a shoal, there's a whole group of them, you know, if you don't get a bite or a little nibble at the float, what tends to happen is the perch will go for the bait, will go for the tail of it. It doesn't actually go in one gulp. It will take maybe 2 or 3 attempts. Sort of nibbles it a couple of times to procure its feed, and I think it's just sort of really to demobilise their prey and then actually then go for the basic kill straight away afterwards. That's why sometimes with perch fishing and you're using a float, you won't actually strike and pull on the line to hook the fish with the first reaction to maybe the float going underneath. So you sort of like maybe notice it sort of like bob a little bit, and then by the 3rd or 4th time when it goes deeper, you know that the actual perch has actually finished going for the tail end of its prey and then will actually get hooked. So what I've done now is I've come back to my seat and reposition the float sort of perpendicular from where I am by my Basher riverbank setup. So if you're fishing specifically for perch, you'll try an area that you know is a sort of habitat for them to hunt their prey, And if you don't get a nibble or a bite, or the float doesn't move around, then you know odds on there's going to be no feeding going on, so you'll move to the next area. If you're fishing, obviously if you're going for other types of species of fish, then you might catch a perch just by chance while actually sort of fishing for something else. But my objective for this weekend is just to have a bit of chill time, but having the relaxed activity of attempting to catch some perch, enjoying the riverbank vibes and the brightness of the day. Less leisurely boats this time of year, so it's a little bit more peaceful. So it's getting a bit dusky dark now. It's 5 o'clock in the evening, and I'm going to reset the configuration with the fishing rod in as far as I think I'm going to get a longer antennae waggler float out the box. But at the moment, chill factor's kicked in, so I'm going to get a brew on the go. Kettle's on the boil. A nice, hot, sweet, yet to have milk added cup of tea. Nice, warm the cockles of your heart. So, nice hot cup of tea is served on my little bracketed table attachment that goes on the upright of the chair. Well, I'll just sit here and chill and have that. I'm going to sort out the reconfig of the float and hook. I might do a triple hook actually. Sometimes you use triple hooks for a lot of predator fish, but with the earthworm it can work really well on a 9 or 10 sized hook. But anyway, I'm going to endeavour to see what I can do with all of that. And I've actually got some little mini glow sticks in that green bag, which I'll put on the end of the tip of the float so I can actually see it in the dark. Okay, so it's just gone 8 o'clock and nightfall is now really night time, and my float is just somewhere where the beam of light is shaking around. I'm probably not going to catch anything tonight because it's the time of year and also the location at the side of the bank, and the time of night as well for perch specifically. But here I decided to spark up a fire. I haven't had a campfire for quite a while using a firebox and a single burner camp stove, but I thought, you know what, I'll clear the ground, dig a bit of a pit and cook my evening meal on the fire and just have the cosy warmth. And that's my widescreen TV cinematic viewing for the night. But I've got to build it up and get it going. So all the wood I've procured is all dead wood, some thick bits, and then going down to some thinner bits. And then you can see the fire pit, but you can see just along the rear edge, the rear broadside, I normally bank up the earth that I dig out of the pit just as a sort of a very small reflector, and then maybe just on top of the ridge of that mound of earth going along the broadside of the fire pit, I can stem up some logs if I do want to reflect the heat off a little bit more. But anyway, I'm going to get this fire on the go now properly. Okay, so I've got the fire going a little bit more now. A lot of the wood I actually found on the ground, or else it was storm damage that was sort of leaning at an angle, was sort of standing dead wood, so that was quite lucky. But even some of the wood, I'd say about half of it, I procured off the ground, and it was reasonably dry. But if you are concerned when you're sort of like storing the wood ready for the fire, next to the fire pit so it's easy access, what I tend to do is, if you think of these two sticks as a sort of a small model version, I'll put one piece of wood there, another bit parallel so there's a gap, but then lay the rest of it so it bridges the wood that's going to be on top of these two little bits of stick going crossways, which is obviously what I've done there. And also on this side you can see the two cross sections parallel, and then the rest of the wood goes on top, so it just keeps it off the ground. If the ground was a bit damp and you were going to keep the wood stored there for a little while before actually using it. So what am I going to knock up to eat? Right, let's see what I've got in my food bag. Okay, I've got some tinned sliced beef. I've got some fresh uncooked vegetables, broccoli, carrots and potatoes that I vacuum packed before I left home. Squidget of tomato sauce, and to sort of gravyfy up a little bit more in flavour and season it, some, or should I say, a vegetable stock cube. And I'll probably season it as well once I boil it up in the saucepan on the fire coals with some salt and some pepper. So I really am living it up this evening with my new acquisition table that I've been using a couple of times, and of course my recliner fishing chair with the attachment little table at the side. Just easy convenience as the geese honk by. What I've done, you can see I've put two thicker bits of wood. It's going to take a while for those two bits to burn through. Two bits that are parallel, extended in front of me here, to rest the saucepan on. Rather than waiting for the coals, or should I say the flames to die down and there be coals, I want to get that water on the go now, but I didn't want to put it straight on top of the burning wood. So that's just about as much as I want it to flare up around the saucepan as it is at the moment. So that will get the water boiling, ready to cook up the vegetables, and I'll add the meat and the seasoning. And that will be my simple fresh veg but tinned sliced beef, wild campfire heated and cooked casserole. The vegetables have now cooked. I added the tinned beef, you can see a bit of colour to it now. The tinned beef slices in gravy, and then added a vegetable stock cube, some pepper, just a touch of salt, because the salt obviously was in the stock cube as well, and a squidgen of tomato sauce, and I've just dipped the spoon in and had a taste test, and it is absolutely awesome. Listen to that bubbling. Yummy. Sitting on a comfy chair next to a wild campfire pit, and I can just feel the gentle warmth even at this distance. I'm ready to eat my beef casserole stew. Fresh veg, and then the convenience of the meat, which was pre-cooked in a tin. Could have used fresh meat, but I wanted to use tinned. Mix in sort of convenient long life food with fresh food. which I've mentioned before is always a good thing. Bit of creativity. But in the outdoors world of wild camping, bushcraft, just outdoors living, you don't get much better than this. Riverbank Bistro. Bash it to the max. Quality. All good stuff. So as you can see, it's the next day, Saturday morning. It's about 9:30. So I just had some breakfast to get myself on the go, as I've got a slight change of plans. I was prospecting to stay the rest of the day here and probably sort of paddle back Saturday evening in the dark from about any time from 5 to 6 o'clock. The weather was actually prospect to be just very light showers, maybe for a couple of hours. But I've been monitoring the Met Office weather via the phone, which again is a good aspect to have your phone with you and keep it on charge. I don't like comms with people, you know, communicating text and phone calls and all that sort of thing, because it defeats the point of being outdoors and having some chill time. But that aside, I do input some pictures onto Instagram and sometimes on Facebook. So if you want to follow anything else that I'm doing, sort of as far as still images are concerned, Instagram, which is on the top link of the top of the channel, over on the right hand corner as you look at the screen, of obviously my channel page. Mindwiseman, aka Maverick Outdoors. As if you didn't know, hi, I'm Pete. A little bit of rain doesn't sort of phase me out, because I was actually going to go out in the canoe with the 2.5 foot canoe rod, specifically to, I'd wrecked some areas over the past couple of months, to maybe do some reed fishing, to maybe later on for the second feed when perch tend to bite, with some areas around here which I know are very good sources for fishing. There's barbel, carp, roach, tench, a lot of tench around, and of course I was mainly wanting to go for perch, with the prospects of a catch and cook, but of course that didn't happen. I knew the odds were really against me as far as the sort of time of year, the time of day that I was going to fish, considering the perch habitat starts to change a little bit, albeit their habitat, as I mentioned before, is always within sort of undergrowth in the water around the riverbanks and that sort of thing. But now it's prospect to rain a little bit more from maybe in a couple of hours time, which will be taking us from sort of like midday-ish right the way through to late evening, and then finishing off later on today and making my way back home this evening. But it had crossed my mind to think, do you know what, maybe I'll stay another day, and tomorrow, Sunday, is going to be much more clear, and then I can sort of make my way home. Now, I would have done that even if I couldn't go fishing, because the rain was going to be a little bit more heavy than expected. And it just wouldn't have been practical to sort of like go paddling in the rain and trying to fish, getting soaking wet and all that sort of thing, because that really wasn't the objective. I wanted more of a chill time. So the irony is, one of the few times that I don't bring out a little bit more food than I need, so that if there was a problem, sort of prepped mindset, if there was a problem, I'd always got food for backup. If for some reason my plans unexpectedly change, or I had to stay another night for, you know, if there was unexpected problem or something, then at least I had food for the next day. But I sort of planned it out where I thought, right, yeah, I'll just bring all the meals that I need until the Saturday night. Now I'm wishing I'd brought a bit more, because I would have actually stayed another night. Even if I couldn't go fishing, it would have been nice just to chill under the tarp in the rain. Doesn't bother me. It would have been really nice for that. And then go back tomorrow. But I ain't got enough food and I need my food. So that sort of changed the logistics a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to strike camp, load up the canoe. It's been good times on that new chair, that's for sure. Tidy up the fire pit, LNT, leave no trace. So at least it's going to be sort of easy and convenient. As you know, if you follow my travels, really the weather doesn't bother me, but I just thought for logistics and practicalities, and really the governing factor is I ain't got enough food. So I've changed my arrangements a little bit and thought, well, if the weather's going to be a little bit worse than anticipated, because the weather sort of a quick bit of random inclusion. I'll do a cut away from myself to the main inhabitants of where I'm a guest. So really, yeah, it's just really to make it more convenient. Plus as well, where I put in and where I'll be taking the canoe out on that particular riverbank, this time of the week, there's normally fishermen and they're out in all weathers. And it just adds that sort of extra aspect that I've got to consider, which is, you know, in the dark, it's raining, I've got to cover up all my kit with the tarps like you saw when I was doing the night paddle to come here. So it just sort of adds a few extra things that I don't really want to do. So I think for the convenience I'm going to strike camp, get on the way back, and by the time I load up the car, that'll be when the weather's going to start to change for the worse, so I will have missed it by then. Alas, I didn't catch any perch after all. But it wasn't priority, it was just a little bit of a fun thing to do, sort of pass time. And I think I'm actually going to be doing it a little bit more regular, most probably next time I'm out, which will be maybe in about 2-3 weeks time hopefully. I'm going to bring my rod, which is much more conducive for close riverbank fishing, where the rod sort of like hangs over, say the bank's here, the swans are at it again. If the bank's here, of course my small canoe rod, which obviously is made for the canoe, is actually recessed back, so it makes it a little bit more awkward where you've got to hang over the edge of the bank to draw the line up so it doesn't actually snag on any overgrowth that's coming off the bank. So of course with a longer rod you've got the tip of it, at least half of it, from midsection to the tip where the line hangs into the water, either sort of vertically down or a slight diagonal, depend where your location of your place in the bait. At least the longer rod is actually hanging over, so all you've got to do is stand up from your chair, sit in position, and you're not actually going to infringe on the surface of the water, any shadows or anything to spook the fish. So for those of you that are ardent fishermen or fisherwomen will know there's lots of different complexities to catching different fish. Of course, what I've sort of covered on this video was just sort of leisurely pursuit really, and then hopefully to have maybe caught some quarry to have cooked up. But of course that didn't happen, but at least it was just quite enjoyable just to try out the canoe rod, even though I wasn't actually in the canoe doing it, although I was planning actually to do it maybe this afternoon. But say things change, and considering the odds are really, I think, against me this time of year. And of course the location, which where I'm pitched up here with my basher, isn't that conducive, but if you remember a video I did, for those that follow my channel on a regular basis, when I was actually here at this pitch and I bumped into a father and his son who are out for a weekend trip, 4-day trip during a bank holiday time, and they caught some perch, and not far from where I'm actually pitched here. It wouldn't be classed as such as a regular habitat of perch, but when it's milder weather, Perch tends to be a bit more in transit, so we'll sort of like move along into different areas and not just anywhere where there's overgrowth or reeds growing out near to the riverbank itself. So, leave the place as I find it, and got my waterproofs on now, lightweight Pacamac jacket and trousers. As predicted, it's 11:30 now in the morning, and the rain kicked in about half hour ago, which was on the Met Office forecast that's when it was going to sort of start this area. So, but when you get used to being outdoors, you can sort of sense atmospheres, not sort of predict the weather, but sort of get a sense to what the weather's going to be like. And there's a coolness in the air, there's a very light breeze. And of course it can rain when it's cold and it can rain when it's windy, but it just feels from experience that the atmosphere and the coolness in the air, just in general, I don't think there'll be any heavy downpours until later on. So by the time I get back, unload the canoe and make my way home, I think I'll beat the heavier downpours of rain. So on that note, it's been a good few days. Had a little bit of playtime with my canoe rod, but next time I'm going to bring out more specific stuff and be a bit more sort of technical, tactical about my fishing, as I'll probably start to do it a little bit more regular now I've got some of my kit out of storage, out of the loft. I've sort of done some fishing on and off over the past few years, but not necessarily on a wild camp or anything like I've done sort of these past few days. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think I will actually put a different angle to coming out in the canoe as well, and maybe being a bit more active. We're doing some fishing from it and also riverbank as well. So watch this space, because I could be slinging my hook a little bit more on a regular basis. So on that note, I'll say thanks for watching. Really appreciate your interest. Hope you got some interest from these few days activity that I was doing, and catch you in another video soon. Cheers. Take care.